chapter 3. And here in chapter 3, we find Job. It wasn't his friends who spoke first. Job spoke first. And it was tradition. When they came to a when they came to situations like this, mourning and so on, the host would be the first person to speak. The host, in this case Job, he has to break the silence. And indeed he did. So after 7 days and 7 nights, the rest wouldn't start first. So he started first. And we will read about his complaints. He said, why was I born? Why was I brought into this world to suffer? And so on and so forth. And then he went on further. He said, let me die. Yeah, let me die and get this over with and so on. So we see here, he was a guinea pig. I mean, we all do laboratory and so on. So he felt like he was a guinea pig and a test case. But mind you, he doesn't know, he did not know that there was a wager, there was a bet, so to speak, done between God and Satan. He was just a guinea pig. Now, before we do, let me just run through some of this truth with you, so as we get this perspective right, and then we go on to complaints, and then Eliphaz started his conversation, his speech. So, number one, first truth we have learned thus far, and they are quite evident from the first 2 chapters. Satan's aim is to destroy our joy in God. Am I right? No need to debate over this. He wanted to destroy man. He wanted to destroy Job. God's aim is to magnify His word in the lives of His people. Magnify His word in the lives of His people. And this will come to surface as we read chapters 38 to 42. And then, because as we start the first 37 chapters, as we now go on to chapter 3, the first 2 chapters, the debacle of Job, remember? The 3 points, the debacle. Then chapter 3 to chapter 37, the debate over Job. They were debating, having rounds of speeches and so on. You look at last week's PowerPoint, the debate. And so, when we come to the last section of this book, then all this will come to realization. And then Job begins to understand, oh, God is faithful. And because of that, I tell you, at the end of the book, Job's worship and Job's love for God is even greater than when he started. This is a faithful God indeed. God grants to Satan limited power to inflict pain. Satan got no power, only with the permission of God. And he can't even take the life of Job. Satan's work is ultimately God's work. Same rationale, same explanation. So, now, don't worry, afterwards I give you time to appear. So, Job's friends. Okay, before we look at Job's friends, we look at the background. Right now, before chapter 3, what has happened? Satan stripped Job of his material substance, right? Number 2, God permitted Satan to take away Job's loved ones. Satan was permitted to take away Job's health. Job lost the love and sympathy of a helpmate, his wife. Job's miserable comforters, his friends. And then as we read further, Job, especially in chapter 3, Job lost his sense of worth and dignity of his personality. He said, why was I born? But we are worth the blood of Jesus Christ. We are more precious. In Luke chapter 12 verse 7, we don't need to turn there. But Jesus said, you and I are worth more than the sparrows. Right? You and I are worth more than the sparrows. We are so precious in the eyes of God. We are the apple of His eye. And because we are so precious, and not because He paid for us with His own blood. That's why we are so precious. You understand? He paid. Because if we are not worthy, not valued in His eyes, Jesus wouldn't have shed His blood. But He loves us. He values us. We are precious in His eyes. We are apple in His eye. And so because of that, He paid the highest price with His own blood. So, don't lose the sense of your worth. Don't say, I'm a nobody, I'm worthless. You are worth a lot because somebody paid the highest price for you. Job lost his sense of the justice of God. Critical and cynical. It is only human. So I just want to prepare you with this so that as you read, because some people, why did this thing happen to Job? And why did Job say all these things to God? How can he? But you must understand the situation. Okay? It was only human that he became critical and cynical because he was going through pain. And with his friends around, he's not helping at all. So, point number 8, Job lost his sense of the love of God. His sense of love, but he still did not curse God. Okay? So, okay, we will come to this later after we. Have you finished copying this? Finished? Not yet. Okay, you copy as I teach. You'll look at Job's strengths later. So, chapter 3, verse 1. After this, after the 7 days and 7 nights of silence, Job opened his mouth, as was the tradition, and cursed the day of his birth. If somebody asks, hey, you mean he could speak at birth? No, you're England not champion. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. Did not say curse on the day of his birth. You understand? So you say, well, how come Job can speak at birth? He couldn't. He just cursed the day of his birth. But one point to note here, very important. He did not curse God. He cursed the day of his birth. May the day perish on which I was born, and the night in which it was said, a male child is conceived. Do you know, I think today also, when a male child is born, wow, big time celebrate, celebrate. There is this discrimination, especially in the olden days, because when you have a male child, it means posterity. The family line can continue. So they will go down the road, down the street, out of the house, and then they will shout, male child is conceived. It was a big day. And in verse 4 he said, may that day be darkness. That means, may it be forgotten. May God above not seek it, nor the light shine upon it. May darkness and the shadow of death claim it. May a cloud settle on it. May the blackness of the day terrify it. As for that night, may darkness seize it. May it not rejoice among the days of the year. You know, what is this referring to? Birthday. Birthday. May it not rejoice among the days of the year. 365 days, we celebrate one day. The day of our birth. Birthday. Imagine if someone calls you, hey, Jordan, can you pray for this brother? His birthday today. And then you pray from verse 3 to verse 6 for him. They take a broom and sweep you out of the house, man. Right? But I just want to paint the contrast. That was how bad he was feeling. And he described all this of his date of birth. So take out my IC, erase that date of birth. Don't remind me of my birthday. Don't want to celebrate my birthday because it is darkness. Verse 7. Oh, may that night be barren. May no joy shout come into it. May no joyful shout come into it. That means on the night, that night barren, that means no baby came out, no birth. May those curse it who curse the day. Those who are ready to arouse Leviathan. Doesn't sound like a Chinese guy. Okay. Now Leviathan, it's according to tradition, is a sea monster. A sea monster. And some people point to this and say, this actually give a hint or evidence that those days got dinosaurs, or big animals and so on. We are not going to that today, but suffice to say that Leviathan is, by tradition, a sea monster. Is pictured as something that opposes the rule of God, who resists God. And it is one animal, one monster that will bring chaos to order. Okay? Will bring God's beauty to confusion. Means destructive, very destructive. That's how it is described. So those who are ready to arouse Leviathan. So on that day that he was born, this Leviathan, this sea monster, was to be aroused, to be awakened. You understand? Means it's a destructive animal that is to be aroused on the day of his birth. So basically, bad. That's why all this points 1 to 8, the background. That's how far down he has gone. May the stars of its morning be dark. May it look for light, but have none, and not see the dawning of the day, because it did not shut up the doors of my mother's womb, nor hide sorrow from my eyes. Because the doors of his mother's womb opened, and he was conceived and he was born. And as we continue reading from verse 11 to verse 19, you will see Job longing for rest. He just wants to rest. He must be quite tired of the scraping. You know, if you see people with eczema, whole day they are scraping. You see little kids when you got itchy skin. I mean, as an adult, as a parent, you feel quite sad, right? And this guy is scraping the whole day, tired. And with all these bad things happening to him, he just wants to rest. So verse 11. Why did I not die at birth? Why did I not perish when I came from the womb? Why did the knees receive me? I read, and it said those days they gave birth in a squatting position. I don't know how that is done. Because when my kids were delivered, they didn't even allow me inside. They wait outside. Then they did a C-section on my wife. So, from what I read, in those days, they delivered babies in a squatting position. And after the baby came out, then they put it on the knees of the mother to give it to the mother. So, why did the knees receive me? So, he was placed on his mother's knees. Or why the breast that I should nurse? For now, I would have lain still and been quiet. Now, you see, his attitude right now is quite a defeatist. He's quite fatalist. Why was I born? And why not just take my life away? I tell you, I praise God. Sometimes God never answers your prayer. Right now, some people, when they are really down and out, they pray. Oh, why? Just let me die, just let me go. Really, I visit hospitals and they ask everyone, hey, what? I want to live. I want to get out of this. I want to be healed. They want to live. But some people say, I want to go. Okay? So, anyway, this kind of attitude won't solve any problem. This kind of attitude can't help you at all. In fact, it might just make it worse. Because you're not fighting. Anyway, Job, as we read on, Job believes in rest. So he thinks, once I shut my eyes, everything will be equalized. Whether you are rich or you are poor, you are young, you are old, you are king or pauper, when we close our eyes and we die, it will equalize all the social inequities. You take away all the constraints of social disorder or the difference in social status. You follow me? All the same when we rest. So just let me rest. For now, I would have lain still and been quiet. I would have been asleep. Then I would have been at rest. And his idea of a soul sleep is still quite prevalent among some believers. I don't want to mention the name or whatever, but they think once we close our eyes, we go into a waiting room and then we rest. Right? But I know in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 8, 2 Corinthians 5 verse 8, you know what that means? To be absent is to be present. We are confident, yes, well pleased, rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord. So when you shut your eyes for the last time, number 30, Chai Chi Sti. When you open your eyes, it's number 1, heaven. Bro, you understand? You just change address. No waiting room. You go into the presence of God. But you see, in the Old Testament, there isn't emphasis on the afterlife. Nothing is taught. But praise be to God. In the New Testament, with Jesus, he came and he said, John chapter 14, in my Father's house, many rooms. I go prepare a room for you. Yeah, when I come, I'll take you to where I am. And you read on the Gospels and so on, a lot has been recorded for us, all the way to Revelation, up to chapter 21. Heaven waiting for us. Okay? But Job, back in the age of the patriarch of Abraham, he didn't know all this. So we don't blame him. So his simple thinking is, just let me shut my eyes and just let me rest. It is not that simple. We will be in the presence of God. Okay? So verse 14. With kings and counselors of the earth who built ruins for themselves. Means what? You know, all these kings and royalties and leaders of the earth, they go and work and they labor hard for their wealth. By what? Conquest. They go and conquer here, conquer there, and so on, to expand their empire. But eventually, they build ruins for themselves. Come to nothing. Come to nothing, because one empire will not last forever and then will be taken over by another one. They will be destructive here and there. But the point is, they labored to obtain wealth. Or with princes who had gold, who filled their houses with silver. Or why was I not hidden like a stillborn child, like infants who never saw light? You know what he's saying? You see, all these kings and princes, they were wealthy, they got rich and so on, but they also came to nothing, ruins, right? A while ago, I had everything. I got 10 kids, I got assets, I got so many. I was the richest in the world. But look at me now. What is the difference? What is the point? Just let me sleep. So he rather be a stillborn child. And in death, he thinks all are equal. You know in Revelation 21, in death, not all are equal. Because those who know Jesus Christ, okay, and those who do not know Jesus Christ, the book of life is open and books were open. You follow me? Okay? The books were open for people who do not know Christ. Not equal. Verse 15. No, verse 16. No, verse 17. There, the wicked cease from troubling. That means, if you are wicked, those who are wicked on earth now, when they close their eyes, they won't trouble anyone anymore. True, but they will be troubled. They will be pengkang, barbecue in hell. True, the wicked cease from troubling others, but they will be troubled. And there the weary are at rest. And Jesus said, come unto him and rest. Okay? So you work hard here, rest. There the prisoners rest together. They do not hear the voice of the oppressor. So prisoners, right now, if you're a prisoner here on earth, you probably got to wake up early in the morning, go do free labor, eat very little, and at the end of the day rest a bit, and next morning start again. But there, prisoners will rest together. And they will not hear the jailer. The jailer always shout at them and whip them and so on. They will not hear the voice of the oppressor. The small and the great are there. And the servant is free from his master. Now I work for you. When we all close our eyes, I don't need to work for you anymore. That was what he taught. He taught that death would bring equality, bring freedom, set you free, liberation. But not exactly that simple. But meanwhile, from verse 20 to verse 26, he is still anxious about his suffering. He's still grumbling a bit about his suffering. Verse 20. Why is light given to him who is in misery, and life to the bitter of soul? I'm in misery. I'm miserable. My soul is so bitter. Why do you still shine your light upon me and give me life? Why don't you just cut off my breath? Take my life away. Who long for death? Who long for death, but it does not come. And search for it more than hidden treasures. So his desire is to die. But this guy, as much as he desired, he did not put the knife in his heart. He did not commit suicide. You follow me now? Don't take your own life. It is murder. You're murdering yourself. Okay? Don't take your own life. And Job, even as he went through all this, he suffered, he complained, he grumbled and so on. He did not contemplate suicide. He wants God to do the job for him. Okay? Smart guy. So, who long for death, but it does not come, and search for it more than hidden treasures. Who rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave. I mean, what joy is there to find a grave? You go Bukit Brown, why got treasures in there? Grave robbers or something. But he paints a picture so in contrast with what our normal expectation would be. So if he find a grave, he'll be so happy. He wants to die. He really wants to die. Why is light, he repeated, why is light given to man whose way is hidden and whom God has hedged in? Whom God has, it's hedge, right? So this is Job, and this is a hedge around him. Now this is a bit different from what Satan had in mind. Satan's perspective is, God, you know why? You read chapter 1 if you remember. You know why Job bless you? Because you have a hedge of blessing around him. Within this hedge, all the blessing. Outside this hedge, bad things, no good things. But within this hedge, all the blessings. That's why he is blessing, worshipping you. What Job is saying here, whom God has hedged in. Within this hedge, God, I'm suffering. I'm not having a good time. You understand? It's the reverse. He said, I've lost my health, my family, my wealth. This hedge is a hedge of curse with boys and everything. Not blessing. So that's why you look at this. Some say half full. Some say how? Half empty. See whose side you're on. Okay? So, and you see, you got no appetite. For my sighing comes before I eat, and my groanings pour out like water. This guy must have lost quite a bit of weight. No appetite. How to eat? And of course, sometimes when we go through very severe bouts of illnesses, we do lose our appetite. And he got no appetite. And my groanings pour out like water. For the thing I greatly feared has come upon me, and what I dreaded has happened to me. You understand verse 25? For the thing I greatly feared has come upon me, and what I dreaded has happened to me. This verse 25, I'm only helping you, I'm expounding, I'm helping you to understand. It's the same fear that happens to a lot of people. The poor, they want to get rich. Then the rich who has it now is concerned, worried about losing it. So it is a cycle. First you don't have it, so you are worried, you're anxious and so on. So you want to have it. Then when you have it, you can't sleep. Wow, what if the stock market turns the other way? Property. What if my tenant doesn't pay the rent and this and that? So there is no peace. If you do not know God and you don't rest in Him, there is no peace. In your poverty, you have anxiety. In your wealth, you have anxiety. So Job, in his moments of wealth, when he had his property and animals and everything, I think somewhere at the back of his mind, maybe he's not so worried about his kids. A little bit, he intercedes for them every morning, but not so. But what if I lose all my assets? A bit worried. That's what he's saying. For this thing I greatly feared. What if one day I lose my wealth? This thing I greatly feared has come upon me. And what I dreaded has happened to me. Maybe my kids may have cursed God and so on, something might happen to them, and it has happened. So this thing has happened to me. I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, for trouble comes. And as I mentioned just a while ago, we rest in the Word of God. We rest in Him. So look at Paul, the Apostle Paul, whether he was, shipwrecked, or whether he was in hunger, whether he was weak, he was cold and so on, his trust was in God. He also had his moments when he was doing well, Paul. So, nothing, don't let the circumstances influence your stand in God. So, let me just point you to some familiar verses so that we are reminded to cast our cares on Him. So we know there's Psalms 91 verse 1. Psalms 91 verse 1. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Dwell, stay there in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under not the Almighty. The shadow, just His shadow alone is good enough for you. And you read in the book of Acts, Peter passed by and his shadow, brought healing. You understand? The shadow of the Almighty, good enough. Proverbs 3. This one we all know. 3, 5, and 6. Job went through all this. He did not lose his faith, yet he did not understand why all this happened to him. Still, he did not curse God, because you know why? Chapter 3 of Proverbs, verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Deep down inside Job, he still trusted in God. This God must have his reason. Though I don't understand it, but I can complain now. I'll leave it to him still. And lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Okay, last one. Matthew 11, verse 28. This one, we all know very well. But I just want to remind us that we ought to rest in him. And I tell you, I do this a lot. Because with so much responsibilities and so many things that draw and stretch me in different directions, I must learn. Verse 28, and practice it. So must you. Come to me, Jesus said, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So it is not of your own, but it is given unto you, and I will give you rest. But what must you do? You must come to him. You must come to Jesus. Come to him. Where is Jesus? He's in your heart. How else can I come to him? Jesus is the Word. So come to his Word. Rest in his Word. And if you need in your circumstance, go and read the wisdom literature. As I mentioned, there is Psalms, there is Proverbs, Song of Solomon, Ecclesiastes, and so on. These are wisdom literature, and these are words of comfort, of assurance for you in your circumstance. So we will not say like what Job said, I am not at ease, nor am I quiet, I have no rest, for trouble comes. No. Our trust and our rest is in Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.